I'm going to let her introduce herself in a moment. And so, welcome, Yvette. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me this morning.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, so anyway, Yvette, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself, and we can kind of go from there.
Thank you. Well, my name is Yvette Durazo. I am the founder of Unitive Consulting,
Mm-hmm.
and it is an organization that I developed in order to work with professionals and their organizations
Mm-hmm.
in order to help them to create a more harmonious workplace relations
Right,
in the
right.
workplace.
Yeah, I noticed on your LinkedIn profile it's very extensive. I mean, like she's highly educated, and so obviously you're very, professional in what you do and how you offer your services. So tell me how you got into all of it, how you got started into it.
Uh, well, I got started it in 2009 when
Mm-hmm.
I was able to go back to school as I was looking to going to getting more education after I finished my bachelor's in international business. And I found these master's degree. Actually, a coworker of mine showed me the master's degree because I was mentioned that I wanted to go into an MBA, and
Mm-hmm.
when he showed me the master's degree, I really fell in love with the idea about conflict management, negotiation, and peace building, and I think that desire came from having the opportunity to work for nonprofit organizations from the beginning of my career.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I noticed it was that um, you have a lot of well-meaning people wanting to come in
Right.
to work together towards a goal or towards something that is going to benefit the community, but at
Mm-hmm.
the same time you have a whole bunch of people with different wants, with different needs, with different um, reasons as to why they're affiliating to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
I was always seeing that there was, like human conflict, that it was just very difficult
Yeah.
to remove out of the equation so that the organization can continue to do well to the community.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I realized that I was missing something in my toolkit. And when I saw that degree, I thought, that is exactly how I can help people
Mm-hmm.
be able to, get together for a goal and be able to work more harmoniously, more
Mm-hmm.
in kind with one another. And I think that that desire came about from being raised by my father, who had no education whatsoever. He barely went to second grade,
Mm-hmm.
and but nevertheless, he was a great entrepreneur that cares so much for their employees that in return I was able to experience after even he passed away how his employees love him and
Mm-hmm.
how they used to care for the business like if it was theirs.
Yeah.
So all of that impacted me in a way that I built my education and my career to help leaders to do good while they're doing great in the community.
Right, right, right. I think sometimes it's called social capitalist or
Yeah, kind of
social
social
consciousness. Yeah,
consciousness. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what is your really specialty that you really like to do? What is it that is really important to you?
Well, I figured out that our minds work in a very unique way. Either you change behaviors because you're in so much pain that you don't have another choice,
Mm-hmm.
or you change behaviors because it brings you so much joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that working with professionals in the workplace, it's a space where either they change because either they're going to have something to lose,
Mm-hmm.
or because they have the desire to be a great leader.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to work with professionals and their organizations in order to help them to build their people skills, and part of that people skills is becoming more conflict intelligent,
Right.
augmenting their emotional intelligence to become conflict intelligent.
Right. 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 Good. So what do you find that some of the obstacles of your clients are facing these days? I know we're still in a pandemic, but I'm sure they're quite different than they were pre. So, what are some of the obstacles or challenges you find that your clients are facing right now?
Right now with the pandemic, I think that there's more an accelerated anxiety and depression
Mm-hmm.
level that it's happening to a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
and in just helping them to identified what is in their control. When individuals feel that they don't have these lotus of control,
Mm-hmm.
they go into fear mode, they go into anxiety mode, into depression,
Mm-hmm.
and just getting them back to what is of value to them, what
Right.
is in their control, and helping them from that standpoint to be able to um, feel more in tune to what they can contribute in society and in their workplace, as we all are putting our 5 cents together here in order to come through this pandemic and through all these political turmoil that we're being
Yeah.
experiencing.
Yeah. Experience. Yeah. There's a lot of multi-level issues going on at the same time, right? You got
Yeah.
your people, you got your environment, you got your policies, you got your political realm, you got everything going on at once. So it's very easy to go into overwhelm, right? Or
Yeah.
depression or whatever people seem to feel the most, I guess. So would you think that the challenges in the future, do you see between now and maybe 30 days from now, what do you think some of the bigger problems are going to be that you're going to be able to help solve your clients?
Well, I think that conflict in the workplace, a lot of companies don't want to address the human side of the conflict in the workplace,
Right.
because most likely they don't know how to deal with it, and in the human resource, even though that they're the authority that's supposed to be working with the human side of the company, they're not necessarily that equipped, especially when dealing with conflict management,
Mm-hmm.
human to human. um, I think that if we don't change or we don't transform that outdated dispute system design that we have been having in organizations for a long, long
Right.
time,
Right.
which is the human resource and having the legal counsel. um, we are in an era where individuals are more self advocates. We
Mm-hmm.
have the ability to create podcasts, the ability to create our own YouTube videos, the ability to express ourselves, um, more because of the technology and because humanity has changed.
Yeah.
uh, Humanity is not, it's not does not suffice with just having uh, the carrot and the stick type of treatment. Either
Mm-mm.
you do this well, or other you lose your job, or or you do this well and we give you the carrot. We're seeing that in the political atmosphere, unfortunately, right now. We're seeing that if you don't behave in a certain way, you don't think in a certain way, or you have a different opinion, they want to start shutting you down, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want to remove you out of the platforms, or they want, they don't want you to do that. But I think that overall, because of the technology and
Mm-hmm.
and the abilities to do that, we're going to continue moving forward with
Mm-hmm.
um, different ways of wanting to human to be treated,
Mm-hmm.
differently. And I think that the same thing has happened in organizations as much as we want to continue with the outdated dispute system designs. I think that
Right.
organization needs to bring more um, trainings and more abilities to design systems inside organizations that will address the human side of the conflict when it's just insidious, when it's something that it's not doesn't have the necessity to be so formal as to a process. And when you get into a process that is so formalized, you dehumanize the process, and it could have been resolved just by people talking to each other, or
Right.
by somebody coming and facilitating the conversation, so that people can get along and move on and continue with the goals and objectives of the organization.
Right. Right.
That makes
So I,
sense.
yeah, so I sort of gathered that what you just said is that you help companies go into the organization and help them uh, release the pressure that there is in a communication issue, or people just can't get along. There's friction, so you can go in
Yeah.
there and help relieve that pressure, so that everybody is heard and everybody is able to still do their job really well, and then you just kind of smooth out that those sharp edges. That's sort of what I've kind of gleaned from what you kind of just said. Because like you were saying, so many companies are still stuck on this old way. Or if you ask about, is there training for this or that? Oh yeah, we have a big training department. And then oh, okay, great. So when can I start? Where can I? They just look at you blank, like, oh, I'm just supposed to tell you that, but we really don't have anything, and or we don't know how to deal with this issue. So, like you were saying, I think it's very, very real, very.
Yeah. It, and Marilyn, you might be aware already of this very well. You have been in doing the work that you do for organizations way longer than I have. Kindness is not one of those things that you can just put in a platform for an hour and teach,
Yeah,
and record it. These are human skills that need to be taught in a very unique way, very experiential way. And sometimes you have to go in and do behavior modification,
yeah.
awareness, create levels of consciousness in order to create more awareness. And
Mhm.
actually, that is what it has been taking me some years to eventually start writing my book, and that is what I'm going to be bringing out very soon. A
Mhm.
book that talks more about how to help individuals to become more conscious of how they deal with conflict, and
Right.
become more conflict intelligent.
Mhm.
I have had the experience of working with quite a good number of clients, and
Mhm.
some of them are even certified in emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And I realized that when I work with them and I help them to become more aware of how they deal with conflict, their emotional intelligence goes higher. So
Yeah.
that's why I call it the conflict intelligence, conflict IQ, because it really increases the ability to deal with the human side of the conflict. And conflict is just so unique all the
Mhm.
time that just teaching people scenarios of how to deal with a certain conflict does not suffice, does not really equip somebody to be able to deal with the human conflict.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, I'm sure there's many kinds of conflicts that you've kind of run into. So speaking of that, do you have any examples you could talk about of how you've been able to work with a client and resolve a conflict?
Well, just recently with all the pandemic, a lot of
Mhm.
the work that I do, it has been in change management. And
Mhm.
in the area of change management, how do you work with individuals when they're going through change?
Mhm.
There's going to be human conflict. There's going to be situations that if the organization does not communicate well to the employees, what is going to happen, or how is this going to be worked upon? Uh,
Mhm.
Employees start creating their own stories in their brain, and creating their own fears, and that precipitates a lot of conflict in
Mm-hmm.
the workplace. So I have been doing quite a lot of work on the areas of change management, with the focus of how to mitigate
Mm-hmm.
uh, human conflict. As I support organizations how to communicate better, how to equip better their staff into
Right.
order to have communications with diversity and inclusion, for example. Now
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing a lot of change management in organizations with regards bringing in diversity and inclusion information, and 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 bringing that into the system process of organizations.
Mm-hmm.
That itself is a huge change for some organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And for many that they have tried to address diversity and inclusion, it's also a change because now they have to and weave that into their processes, into the way they hire people, into the way that they even conduct their meetings in many many different ways. So
Right.
that's how I have been bringing in the importance of how it is to work with one another and be able to either resolve conflict or be able to create awareness of what can create the human conflict and then mitigate that.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, do you have an example of a client that the type of clients you work with? Can you share a story, a success story of a client you worked with that you've been able to use your process with and they've had great success?
Yeah, actually, I have had the pleasure of working with, all levels of professionals, all
Mm-hmm.
levels. And I get that opportunity to feel, rewarded by seeing them how they're doing much better, how
Mm-hmm.
they, uh, you know, open up their ability to see things in a different light, and we have well-meaning people, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
that they're not equipped to be able to have these type of conversations or to be able to deal with conflict, because a lot of people fear conflict. The human
Mm-hmm.
conflict is fear. So
Yeah.
just teaching individuals of how to go about doing that is very rewarding. And I'm thinking so many different opportunities that I have had to work with so many. But for example, it could be in the healthcare industry. You know, you might have an entire. I had the opportunity to work with a department that was dealing with a situation that the conflict was uh, being developed by the technologies, the
Mm-hmm.
ones that deal with the technology and the inside of the department, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And the conflict has was so insidious that it was affecting the nurses and
Mm-hmm.
affecting the doctors,
Mm-hmm.
because these two individuals were it's so much conflict, uh, you know, between one another. And working with them, I helped them to realize how they were not only dealing with each other, but
Mm-hmm.
also how they were impacting the work of others in the department.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I obviously equip them to with ways of how they can communicate with each other. I work with them with regards to their trigger points,
Mm-hmm.
what triggered one another. They were triggering each other because of the
Mm-hmm.
way that they were behaving without even realizing that that was happening in their mind.
Right.
And once I brought that to their light, and then they start realizing that the other person and the other person was not really meaning to make them very angry, they started working with each other better.
Yeah.
And that alleviated the stress level that it was creating with the nurses, that it
Mm-hmm.
was creating with the doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they were in conflict, they immediately want to involve other people because they want it to be right.
Right.
uh, you know and
Yeah.
and they were bringing in the nurses and telling their side of the story, and enrolling them to their way of thinking because they wanted to feel right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was draining so much energy from everybody that it was creating a very toxic environment
Right.
in that department. And, you know, if I were to be a client of that department, I would have been very worried because the things that were happening because of that insidious conflict, and in one way or another, were putting in danger the patients,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
even though that they were the technicians. But
Right.
those technicians were very close working with the patients.
Right. Right.
So that is one of the conflicts that I just recently worked with. That um, how is it that two individuals can create so much drama and so much conflict that it can impact at a very delicate level the client, the overall client that it's outside, the one that
Mm-hmm.
needs to come to the hospital because they had an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how I see that the impact that it has, helping employees to deal with conflict in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Awesome. I think there'd probably be a lot more of you working in that environment because, like you were saying, people want to be right, or they've got the facts right, or this is the way it should be. You have all these different personalities, right? And you have their different mindsets of how things should be, right?
You have different personalities. You have the implicit bias that plays a whole role. You know, you have different ways of seeing things, the perceptions. There's
Yeah.
so much. There's so much.
Yeah. 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 Well, great. That was a nice conversation, Yvette. Nice to get to know you a little bit better about what you do and how you help people and companies to migrate the conflicts that they may be having. And it might be, like you said, one simple conversation is firing up everybody else, right? And then all of a sudden you've got this massive problem, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And these conflict that I just shared with you had been already been dealt with. Many departments that supposed to be dealing with the conflict inside the organization. It was the labor relations. It was the equal opportunity department. It was the human resource, and these conflicts have been there for a couple of years already,
yeah,
and none of those departments inside that organization were able to deal with it because they function through policy and procedure.
right.
Let's look at the conflict that these people are having and see whether if they're follow if we need to follow policies and procedures, or they're following the policy and procedures.
Right.
And then they would say, well, no, it's okay, you guys can deal with it, and just push the conflict away
Mm-hmm.
until they finally called me in, and I start working with them, and everything else fall into place, and people are working more harmoniously. And for me it's a great satisfaction to be able to do this work.
Mm-hmm. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. So, how can people get a hold of you, Yvette? The people that you reach out to, who do you like to work with?
Well, they can reach me out on my website. It's unitivconsulting.com. I
Mm-hmm.
also have just recently done a YouTube video channels where I have been putting some content
Okay.
and examples of trainings that I have done since 2011. I had put a little bit of the YouTube video so that people can see, the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And they can also look me up in LinkedIn.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Marilyn, for inviting me over.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so you also be able to find Yvette on podcast.heartatworkonline.org, and her page will be there. You can find out a lot more about her there than our mini conversation here. But anyway, I always think the live conversation is much very valuable in the aspect of getting to know somebody else and just being curious to find out what other people are doing. So thank
Yeah,
you, Yvette, for joining me today. And
thank
I'm going
you.
to close off the call and just
And
say,
before
yeah,
you close, let me just share the little gift, right? Um,
okay.
if anybody would like to, contact me, the first person, I will definitely do a live, what is it, a lunch learning, what is it called? Lunch and
Lunch and learn. Lunch and learn.
for your team at your
Yeah.
work. So I
Yeah.
have that little gift for the first person that, contact Marilyn,
Mm-hmm.
and I will definitely do that, and we can schedule that, in a video Zoom, and I can offer that to your team.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, you have to go to podcast.heartatwork to get that.
Great.
So anyway, well, thank you very much, Yvette, for joining me. And in closing, I'm just going to say, please be kind to each other because that's all we have. So enjoy your day, and we'll be chatting with all of you very, very soon. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank
Bye
you